He worked the night shift, collecting valuable goods from bonded warehouses before driving them to designated business customer warehouses. His shift would start at 10 p.m. and end at 6 a.m. It's been 5 years of marriage, and I sometimes wonder if he was really at work. My thoughts would wander off into him doing the forbidden. After all, we are both religious, so he never would have another woman. Or would he? But how could I wonder such things when he takes home a regular paycheck to take care of us? Moreover, our intimate lives were filled with passionate moments, so my thoughts could never be true. I had and still do have a high dose of libido, and when Norman is out at work at nights, I seem to crave intimacy more than any other hour of the day. Some daytime hours are similar, but with less yearn. I needed to control myself around a young intern who must have been 10 years my junior, because he looked only to be 22 or 23 years old. I would salivate over him, wondering if he doesn't find me attractive. Just passing him by the printer would stir notions of him turning around, grabbing me and having his way with my body. I never made a move on his young frame. This young junior became the least of my problems. One day I stopped at the supermarket on my way from work, and while I was in the juice aisle, this man approached me and said hello. His hello was pure innocence. I responded with a pleasant hi, and that was it for my encounter with him in that aisle. I made my way to the eggs and milk aisle, and after a few moments of indecision, there he was approaching me again. "We keep bumping into each other," he said with a smile. "Yeah," I responded. I made my way to an available cashier and left the store. After putting my few groceries into the trunk of my car, closed it and turned to get inside, there he was, parked next to me, putting a grocery bag in the trunk of his car. "This is destiny," he said, looking in my direction. For reasons unknown to me, I reflected on how lonely I will be tonight when my husband Norman will be away at work. I could feel the walls around my boundary cracking, even collapsing. I caught myself saying, "maybe," in response. We exchanged names and chatted for perhaps 10 minutes. I found it so easy to talk with him about my work, and he listened carefully, following up and digging deeper into everything that I said. As I looked up at him and spoke, he moved his gaze from my eyes to the top of my head back and forth throughout the short conversation. "You're good at random conversations," he said. Random, I thought, so this is purely platonic, I thought to myself. This lessened any of my resistance that might have remained. "I would love to talk with you again," he said, "and if you also would like to, here's my card." I took his business card, and that's when he asked for my number. I've not given a man my phone number in 5 years since I've been married, but for reasons unknown to me, here I was writing my number on the back of Daniel's business cards. I got in my car and drove away, too nervous to take another glance at him. I've never been in an interracial relationship before, so I have no clue what caused my nervous feelings. Butterflies were tingling all over my pectoral muscles. The center of the mounds above my pectoral muscles were as perky as a sunflower pointing towards the sun. Could this be a bright as sun moment, or was it the beginning of a dark night of troubles that was giving me these chills? Once home, I carried out my regular routines. I packed away the groceries, changed out of my work clothes, and settled into the couch. Norman was in the kitchen finishing up. He regularly cooks dinner, and today was no exception. We had dinner, watched TV, and by 9:30 p.m. he was off to work, and I went to bed. Norman and I maintained our regular routine for a week. My routine continued to include images of Norman not being at work, but being out with some other woman. In the second week after meeting Daniel, about 10 p.m., when I knew that Norman would be fully engaged in work, I called Daniel. One part of me wished he would be asleep and so wouldn't answer the phone. After only 2 rings, he answered. My throat was dry, the words were difficult to get out. He said, "Hello," and I responded, hell. I should have left it at hell, because I don't know what the hell I was doing calling another man, while my husband was at work. Another hell then. Hello, shyly burst out of my mouth. "This is Kay, we met at the grocery store a couple weeks ago," I blurted out. "Oh yes," Daniel responded. "I enjoyed our talk so much," he said. Daniel and I chatted on the phone for more than 3 hours. He spoke about his work, his breakup with this girlfriend 6 months ago, his love for cooking, and his hopes for the future. I found it easy to talk with him about my work, my husband's work, and how I sometimes wonder if he's really at work during the night or if he's with another woman. Daniel said that he understood my concerns, but perhaps he's truly working. In a weird way, Daniel made me feel listened to and understood. Norman was never such a good communicator, and for reasons I don't fully understand, I said to Daniel, "Thank you for that insight, it really helps me." Daniel melted my heart when he said, "Sure, anything that will make you feel better, that's what I'm here for." I could have cried or laughed at that moment, because I cannot recall having the feeling that someone could hear and understand me so deeply. I hastened to move the conversation to another topic, because I didn't want to give away how he made me feel. I moved the conversation to talk about our plans for the summer and how we wished it were longer. Before we ended, Daniel asked what was the best time to call me, and I told him that 10 p.m. is best because Norman leaves for work at 9:30 p.m. We chatted for a few more minutes and said goodbye. I must have eventually closed my eyes at 1:30 a.m. About a week later, my phone rang at about 10:15 and the name on my phone sent shivers up my spine. It was Daniel. I was nervous and wondered if I should answer the call. "What am I doing?" I whispered to myself. 3, 4, 5 rings, and then I answered the call. "This is Dan," he said. "I know," I responded. "I have your number saved under your name," I replied. He chuckled and said that I'm doing the same thing that he has done with my number. We both grinned. We had another long 3-hour chat about our lives. We both built on our last conversation, giving out more details about our relationships, his recent past and my current. The phone calls continued for another 3 or 4 weeks, sometimes twice per week, and with us taking turns to call each other, or so it seems. Things took another turn, one night when I was already dressed for bed, and I was lonely, and my Mount Everest libido kicked in. I called Dan. He answered. I said, "Can we talk?" And he responded with confusion, "Sure, we always talk." I said, No, I mean, can we talk in person? He didn't skip a beat, he said, "Sure." "Where do you want to meet?" He said, "Let's meet in the warm outdoors." I replied, "Yes, where?" I threw on a camisole dress, headed out the door, and into my car. We met at a parking lot overlooking a park. Dan was already there. He got into my car. I didn't even wonder why we were not meeting at his place. I just needed to see him and would have seen him anywhere. "What's happening?" he said. "I'm just a bit lonely and wanted some company tonight," I said. He held my hand and told me he can be my company. In the dark of the car, he was brushing off something in my hair. While it is very unlikely that he could see something in my hair, it felt good. I felt cared for. He gently rubbed my palms, and we talked about how it was so good to see each other in person again. Having never been in a relationship with a man of a different race, I was learning that caring is not based on race. Somehow, I never learned this in my psychology college courses. He gently fingered his way from my palms up one side of my hand towards my neck, and that's when more of my barriers fell. The feeling was so good, I wondered where Dan was all of my life. I must have moaned or done some other actions that invited him to kiss me. His lips were soft, and his kiss gentle. He was now holding both sides of my face as the intensity of his kiss grew. I responded to his kiss with complete surrender to his kiss. This felt so good, I wish it would not stop. Just then Dan stopped. He asked, "Was it okay that I kissed you?" His question felt so good, felt as if he wanted to be sure that I was comfortable with what he just did. It made me feel valued. Sure, I said. I couldn't wait for him to kiss me again, and he must have figured that too because his lips were pressing against my own again. Dan must be a gentleman, because almost everything else that he wanted to do, he would ask whether I was okay with it. I obliged and gave in to every suggestion. With his hands and fingers, Dan explored me from neck to knees in my car that night. We left the parking lot about 2 hours after arriving. He drove behind me to ensure that I got home safely, and this was the icing on the cake to tell me that this man cares for me deeply. He called later to say that he was home safe. We continued these outdoor trysts for the entire summer. It only stopped with the onset of colder nights, but I had a plan for that. One night early in fall, I called Dan and told him to let us meet. He said that it's too cold outside, so I pretended that I didn't know and said that he should come over to my place. Dan did not hesitate to say yes. My yellow lace camisole dress would not be overly suggestive, I thought, so I slipped into it. Within 30 minutes, Dan was ringing my doorbell. We continued where we left off in the summer. It always starts with conversation for 30 or more minutes, followed by gentle touching of the arms, neck, hair, until it escalates to kissing. We've never made love before, but tonight all the stars were aligned, and I found myself directing Dan's hands to my nether region, where I needed the most touch. The camisole dress was getting in the way, so he removed it with my eager assistance. This was my way of giving consent. I only wore thongs, so nothing much was left on my body. The gentle Dan did what he always does, gently and passionately explored me from neck to knee. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I quietly whispered, "More." Dan took that as permission, and we made sweet love. Was this love, when the man that I love was out very hard at work? In the moment, I didn't think of it that way. I just felt that I was being taken care of, getting what I wanted, and wished it would not stop. At the end, we lay on the couch together with only the sound of our breath reminding us that we were in the same space. I could lay here all night. In the past, I wondered if Norman would do the forbidden, and here I was. I just did the forbidden. I nudged Dan and he got up. I got dressed, and only then I realized that Dan still had the condom on him. He must have showed up with it on because I can't recall him stopping to put on one. How careless I was to not have made sure of this. We said goodbye after a long embrace, and I showered and went to bed. Dan called to say that he got home okay. Were we in a relationship? Is this cheating? Is this an affair? I know the answers, but somehow asking myself over and over seems to reduce the guilt, because at least I was open to asking myself these tough questions. We continued the escapades for more than 2 years, and to this day, I have not told my husband Norman. I told a good friend while it was happening because I felt that I would explode if I kept it inside of me. It was a relief to get it out of me then. Dan moved out of the country and the affair and cheating ended. That's what I now call it. Since I am no longer in it, I can see it for what it was. I later accompanied Norman on a few of his secure package runs at night, and this proves to me that he was never ever cheating. He was just an honest, hard-working man. How much of a fool I was. I still have not told Norman. Will I ever tell him? I don't know, because I fear losing him. I have changed my ways and consider myself lucky that Dan moved away. Otherwise, I might have destroyed my marriage.